Hello everyone, in this video I will be showing you how to create an original setting for your action scene to take place in. So in this example scene you can see me coming up with a rough concept landscape for my short film. My short film is called Surviving the Fall, and this is the pre-production for that, and then I'm going to go into the storyboarding phase and showing you how I created those first few establishing shots to kind of give the audience an idea of where they are in this fantasy world. It's a very important stage of filmmaking. You can't skip this phase. So it's very necessary if you're thinking about creating your own action scene. This is one of those first necessary steps that you need. I'm doing this first sketch in Krita with a basic pen tool, so nothing fancy. You could do it with pencil and paper. You could even do it on a napkin in a cafe if you wanted. It really doesn't matter. It can be as simple as that for starting off your concept. While I was drawing out this environment, I was thinking a lot of things like how the characters and people in this world would move around and how they would live in these floating islands in the sky. I was also thinking about all of the references I had researched that day. I spent a good few hours going through Google Images and putting together a library of inspiring reference images for me to base the world on. I think I'll have a few of them flash up throughout this video just to give you an idea of what kind of things inspired me for this, because it might seem as though I just pull these things out of thin air, but it's not true. Like with all artists who create films, they're all inspired by something, and mine are a collection of different things. I mean, I went for a slightly oriental style with architecture, but also tried to put in a bit of Art Nouveau here and there, and the floating islands might seem like a cliche idea, but to me they're still very it's an extremely fun and interesting idea, this suspended gravity idea. So I came up for this location for the action scene when I was snowboarding in France over a year ago now, and I was on the cable car going up to the top of the mountain to snowboard down, and I've always loved cable cars, so I was wondering how I could possibly feature them in an animation, and that's kind of how this whole idea came about. Just interesting little fact for you when you're watching this animation later when I've finished it. Now that I've drawn out the idea of what I want the location to look like, I can then start storyboarding some establishing shots for the animation. When establishing the shot, try to capture it from a variety of angles for the audience to see the world as if it's a real place, as if you've gone there, you've visited there, and you're snapping photos everywhere. You know, it's important that you give some time in your film to showing the audience where they are. It will make things a lot less confusing later, and it will kind of be a nice setup for the action so that they aren't confused about like where the hell they are. For mine, I spent quite a large part of the animation just on showing the world that they live in, because it's very different from what they're used to, you know. And if your setting's more realistic, then perhaps you don't need to spend as much time establishing the place, but still you should always open up your scene with an establishing shot so that the audience know where they are. It's very important to do that. Another important thing to remember is to create depth in every shot that you create for your animation. Well, it doesn't have to be every shot, but the majority of shots should have good depth. That means having a foreground, a midground, and a background. Or you can even add in more layers than that, you know, have nice faint things in the very back. And by creating layers of depth, you make the world, you make it more convincing and more authentic. Get certain objects or buildings very close to the camera and have others very faintly in the distance. And when you do this, it becomes surprisingly easy to make an appealing landscape for your action scene to take place. Also, remember composition. This is the placement and areas of interest in your shot and the shapes that are made by the things in the frame. On my website, animatorguild.com, you can download these composition grids that I occasionally use to make my compositions look nice. They're free to download, and all you have to do is just sign up to the mailing list, and they're fairly easy to find otherwise. And also you can try and come up with your own composition grids based on, if you watch any films and you see a composition that you really like, always be looking out for them. And you can actually look at the ratios of where they've placed certain things in the frame and note them down, and then try and apply that to your own stuff, and you can come up with some very interesting results. Also, when I was coming up with things to talk about with this for this video, I put together a small list of things to think about when you're creating your action scene environment. So first of all, the main things, when and where. So what time zone is this in? Is it in the past, present, future? Is it in an alternate universe, but you have certain crossovers with this world? Where, the location. There's so many great locations you could base your idea on. Sometimes with these fantasy locations, it's good to pick a place in real life, in the real world, a location on Earth, and then try and change a few things about. So mine would be perhaps based in somewhere like Vietnam, because Vietnam has these amazing landscapes, but then I take it and I put it in the sky. So the next on the list, dynamics. So this is an interesting one. This definitely applies to action scenes. So is it an up and down dynamic? Is it diagonal, or is it flat, side to side, or is it a mixture? When the characters are moving from A to B, will it be primarily a thing where they'll be moving vertically, perhaps? Or will they be moving along in a straight line? Or will it be a maze? Or something like that, That can really change the mood and the pacing of your animation. That ties into the next point, which is your character's goals. So in this film, the character's goals, it's a race to the finish line. But perhaps in your shot, the character is lost. Maybe they don't know their way around, or perhaps they are staying put in a single location. Just something to think about. Other ones, your obstacles and your dangers and risks. So in this one, the obstacles are very clear from the beginning. There's these buildings, and then there's just these steep cliff faces which just end in nothing. Like, it's just sky below them, it's sky above them and sky below them. So very dangerous, because once you fall, there's not really any coming back. And we actually get into that in the later part of the animation, because one of the characters falls off. So that can be a great mechanism for your story. The other one is population and people. So when I was designing this environment, I was thinking a lot about how the people would actually cope and adapt to this location. What in their lifestyle would change. Perhaps transport would be different here. So that's why I've got these bridges, these elaborate elevator lifts and the cable cars, nice effective means of transport. How would they have agriculture up in these floating islands? Maybe they would have some kind of way to fly from island to island through hot air balloons or blimps and things. It really gets your imagination going, where you start to imagine these factors. And of course, what makes your environment different from your last scene? If you end up making a video and it's the same location as your last video, it's set in a city, it can get a little bit monotonous. Perhaps flip things on their head and just put it in like the opposite. So in this one, say if it's in a very hot environment, the next video you do, take them to a really cold environment, and it just it's very refreshing to do that. That's just something I personally like to do. Maybe it's not something that everyone will enjoy doing, but that's the end of my list. So hopefully, if you keep those things in mind when you're creating your environment, you'll create something that's very original, very neat, and very interesting to your audience. That's about it for that. Please leave a comment on this video if you like it. Check out my website where you can download my source files for various animations, and you can watch exclusive tutorials. It's on animatorguild.com. You can also check out my website if you want to see my other animations on www.howardwimshurst.com. It's another one you can do, sign up onto Facebook and stuff like that. But leaving a comment is a great help to me, especially if you have a suggestion for other tutorials you would like to see me make next. So I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
In 3D space, and I'm imagining the camera following her. So not only am I animating her right now, I'm animating the camera movement at the same time, and that's how I do a lot of my action scenes. And I recommend trying it because it opens up a whole new world of animation.